Alright guys, so this is video 2 of Drunk YouTube Day. We're going to talk about how to make kick drums that like really knock hard. Probably harder than you need, and you can always scale it back from there. But let's take a listen really quick. We're going to do like a kick drum shootout from some of the best designers out there, allegedly. So Decap, he makes drums that knock. I think it's like the #1 selling drum pack on Splice. It's up there. I think Drum That's Knock just Volume 8 just came out, so that's where these are from. Black Octopus, if you don't know them, they're excellent. Cymatics, everyone knows Cymatics. They're really good with the marketing. You'll find their samples are not actually as good as they say they are. And then Dead Mouse, who doesn't know Dead Mouse? So the white ones are the ones that really like have the heaviest hit to them. The green ones, the light green ones, also do, but they're not quite as heavy. So I want you to take a look at a few things along the way. One is just like listen for the initial click, right? The initial part of the sound, and then just after, we're really talking about like 5-10 milliseconds, like very short initial part. Then there should be a good knock, and then there's like a gravity kind of at the end, right? They happen in different frequency ranges. So there's kind of 3 distinct parts I want you to listen for. One is going to be the high frequency content. One is going to be the sweep of frequency range around like 90 to 70 hertz. And one of them is going to be where it lands on the sub. And what you'll find on the really big ones is that they have all of those present, right? And also the volume over time is going to be a big part. So some of them are going to be really, really bricked out, and they might hit you nicely initially, but they kind of thump at you or womp at you. They don't really like kick right. And especially on those bricked out ones, they're actually problematic by the time you hit your mastering chain, because you're going to be hitting more compressors and stuff. They're just going to get more squashed. They don't have like real transients to begin with. So anyways, let's just take a listen really quick. Pay attention to the shape over time, and also the harmonics over time. Like, is it mostly a sine-like tail, like a very pure tail, or is there a lot of upper harmonics on the tail? Sort of pay attention to these 3 things, so the click, the knock, and sort of the sub weight at the end, and the presence of harmonics over time, and the shape of the volume over time. Kind of pay attention as I go through these kicks, right? Let me zoom out on this scope, which got zoomed in somehow, and then that will help. We'll put it right about here, should be good. So check it. So you immediately notice a lot of these are really squared out. Like they're bricked, right? All right, this one is not brick, but it also has the best weight. Look at the sub frequency. All right, see where it kind of lands, right around 40 hertz. That's kind of the money spot in terms of sub weight that really knocks into you well. Is around that F sharp down there. All right, so check this guy again. Look at the sub frequency, right, and the sweeping through the 100 to 70 hertz range. All right, so you got this secondary peak right around here. You're going to find that around 70 to 80 hertz where you get like the most kind of initial punch, but if you just have that, you won't get this like heaviness to the kick, which you get from the sub frequency. So it helps to get down into the sub frequencies later. And it also makes sense, the bigger the waves, the lower the frequency, so it's going to take a while for these low frequencies to reach you and accumulate you. I mean, they aren't moving slower, but by the time they peak, it's going to be more milliseconds than by the time a fast frequency wave peaks. So you get these high frequency waves kind of being at full scale first, and then these low waves kind of catch up to you. So when we go into actually how to synthesize these, I'll show you the pitch curves that I use to sort of make sure that this happens. But that's kind of what's ideal. So let's go through more of these. Right, these are really big ones, obviously. Cool. Cymatics ones, these are actually the worst. Now, part of the problem is the volume's all over the place, but they're still the worst, honestly. Even if you correct for the volume, they're still the worst. And you'll notice a lot of them are like really bricked out. Not that one. That one, right? It's like so flat. It doesn't have any sort of triangular shape. And by the time that hits a compressor, it's just going to become more so, right? So you really lose a lot. And then here's some dead mouse ones. Cool. So let's just listen to these heavy ones again compared to some of these, well, a couple non-heavy ones. Right, and then these heavy ones. Cool. So hopefully you're looking at the frequency spectrum and stuff. If not, rewind it really quick. Now take a listen to mine. Right. This guy is just this first one, just shorter. These kicks are pretty long, so I didn't want you to think that like these only have kick because they're like long. All right. So I would argue that mine probably sound at least as good as any of the other ones, and maybe better, right? All right, some of them have different characteristics, whatever, depends on what you're going for. But I will say the longer you make the tail before it drops down, you really start to womp more than kick. And that gets especially problematic, again, when you hit compressors and all that gets shoved down and the whole thing becomes a womp without, really kicking at you. I'm going to do another episode more when I talk about transients hitting your mastering compressors and stuff. But for now, just assume that like if you can get as much kick and thrust and have it be more triangular, it's going to turn out better in your master for sure. Okay, so we've noticed some of the characteristics that really cause these to knock hard. So let's take a look at this, how I made this. So I started in kick 2. I know it seems like there's a lot of stuff going on here. It's really not that bad. There's a little bit of stuff to clip peaks, a little bit of stuff to shape the transients, and mostly like these glue compressors and the saturators and stuff. I'm really just adding the harmonics, the amount of harmonics that I want, and ultimately then we're going to re-envelope that, because basically one of the secrets here is as you drive these things into saturators and other things to sort of square out the wave some to add these harmonics, what you're going to find happens is you're going to brick these things out like a lot of these Cymatics kicks and stuff are, and it's not really going to punch. So you want to re-envelope those at the end. I use Shaperbox to do that, so that's what this is. You can see this downward slope. Right, and so without Shaperbox, right, it's got this much longer wompiness. Cool. So let's get into this. So let's just start before we get all this stuff, right, which we'll talk about. And honestly, it won't even take that long. But let's first dive into just kick 2. So it's good to have everything sounding pretty good at every stage of the game as much as you can. So kick 2 is what I synthesize all my kick drums. It's my favorite kick drum synthesizer. This is the pitch over time. So you can see pitch down here. This is the pitch over time. So just listen to the initial tick of it. But first off, there's these clicks, which are just samples. Right, so that's in there too, but if we mute those, there's also a little bit of a click from this, and that's actually this guy here. So we're starting at really high frequency and then dropping down rapidly. So you can kind of calibrate that to get the kind of knock that you want, the initial flick, so to speak. That's pretty good. I kind of got it a little bit in tune and stuff. Now this next shelf I want you to see, this is kind of the punchy range. It's not really the heavy gravity. That happens here, right? This is from usually a little bit lower than this, but usually around 80 to like 70 hertz. You're going to get most of that punch. So if I were to... Right, about here is where we get a little bit of the subwaves, but that initial punch, that's all coming from here. right, so we can kind of set it up to get like that nice kind of punch into you, right? Control the volume of this, so you might want a little bit more of that. And then that's this part of the wave here. Now it helps to sort of settle into the range you want for your sub. You can get it exactly in tune. Like if you want it more of like a pitched kick, you could do this. Right, and then you could use it kind of like an 808. But it does help it feel even heavier if it kind of keeps falling in pitch a little bit. But a lot of that real gravity comes from this frequency range right here, from like about 44 down to 36 or so hertz, right? D is about as far down as you'd want to go. And even F will kind of shake you harder. It'll feel like it has less gravity than D, which is a little bit lower, but it actually shakes you harder, which is nice. Right. Cool. So, we're doing pretty good coming out the gate, right? This is a little bit long, but we're going to re-envelope it at the end. So even if it were long, we're going to be able to reshape that at the end. All right, now there is some drive and distortion going on and harmonics, right? Right, so I'm going to take out a lot of these harmonics maybe, or just a little bit of them. But we're going to add some back in. So hopefully you get what's going on here. So this is the volume envelope, right? The pitch envelope. These things really matter. Little changes in this make a big difference, right? You could hear, right? There's this part that actually knocks at you a little bit harder, like these frequency sweeps that just work better. And it's, good to sort of listen to the pitch, but as long as you're like sweeping through pitch ranges and like your sub pitches are pretty close, because you're constantly moving in pitch a little bit, it really doesn't matter too much to be a little bit out of tune, as long as it sounds right. And then you can change the master tuning here. Just be careful, because it's going to mess up these frequency areas that add this knock and this gravity. All right, so let's run through this really quick. Punish, you don't even need this. Mostly, honestly, this is just making it louder. You can see this. This isn't really desirable, and the only reason I let it do this, like swell up like this, which happens because of the gain and stuff in the compressor. This is excellent if you can get it cheap. I got it for like $50. Heaviosity makes it, but it's like a compressor and saturation. You can just see these red lights lighting up. That's what's causing the saturation that's going on, is because it's clipping this thing a little bit. Which I'm doing for timbre, right, to add to the sound. This is unnecessary. I just like the way that it sounds, but you can get just as good results for the most part without it. Mostly I'm using these glue compressors and any type of like saturator that will square out waves, right? So if you don't know how saturators work, they're basically, see this line here? A 45-degree angle is like keeping the wave the same, and if you were to get something steeper, basically coming out from negative infinity, right, as the waves are waving, coming out from negative infinity, it's going to go at a steeper angle, which is going to be more like a square or a saw wave. And specifically, you can see these are getting more and more like squared out. The soft clip will do the same thing, is that it will present a ceiling and it will round out waves as they come towards that ceiling and then flatten out along the ceiling. So square out your waves, like make them more like square waves. That adds even harmonics, I believe, even harmonics, maybe odd harmonics. I forget which ones. I get those confused on, but it basically adds half the harmonics. Pretty sure it's even harmonics. So basically what all this means is this first compressor, it's actually just reshaping this transient. Remember that swelling up that we did? This biting down, even at its lowest attack speed, is going to reshape this transient and give us a nice like knock at the beginning. I'm using a really slow release time and a really high ratio to do that. But basically kind of reshaping it and also adding a little bit of sound. So this soft clipper, see this yellow light? That's really just coming on at the beginning, and that's adding some extra high-end bite to that initial transient. That's mostly why I did it. This guy is actually responsible for a lot of the squaring out of the waves. All right, so see how this flattens it out? Look how much makeup gain is here. We're already approaching the top, doing all this makeup gain. And look at these waves. Right, they're starting to square out quite a bit at the top already. Now, I'm not going to use all of this 100% wet. I'm going to use a fraction of it. But that's basically what it's doing, is it's getting it more squared out as I wetten it more. Same thing with this. It's got a slightly different sound, so I'm kind of blending these together to taste. Right, until I get it to sound like I want. Now this first buzz cut, what buzz cut is a clipper, and it will just slice off the top, and I'm not really trying to impact my whole wave. I'm just trying to clip off that very little peaky part that's sticking out at the top at 0 there. All right, so you can see I'm slicing off just this top bit. I could like slice it off entirely, but I'm not. All right, just that little top bit. You won't even be able to hear it, but it's going to make your kick be able to have all of its real energy peak at 0, and it's going to generally just make your kick better and react to compressors better, because the last thing you want is this little tiny peak and your compressor think that your kick is like 4 decibels louder than it actually is, and then it's just messing up all your calibration and curves. All right, this mid-side compressor is actually mostly for the sides. We've done all this work on the mids. That's mostly the sub signal that you've heard. But this side signal, did I turn? Oh, yeah. Because I muted them, is coming from these guys. Right, so without this side compression, I'm using this compressor mostly to shape this transient. Again, with this, I could use 30. If I want it to be a little bit sharper, I could use 10 as the attack, but it's going to... Right, it's just making the transient sharper or fatter as I make it shorter or longer. And then because it's hitting this yellow dot is turning up a little bit, it's soft clipping, which means it's again squaring out the waves a little bit. But this is widening out the side signal because it's making the side signal louder, so it's making the whole thing wider basically. And it's helping the kick when it hits smack with full stereo width to some extent, even though all the real frequency content, all the low stuff is mono, right? So you still get this nice heavy mono kick, but this impression of width, right? And so you'll notice without this, it's also louder. I could gain compensate that for you, but yeah, I'm also on the mid signal. The mids, I'm also adding a little bit of drive just to add a little bit more of that saturation in the initial attack. But yeah, even if we were to quiet down, the width of it is really what I want you to pay attention to, and that'll help it knock into you with like a little bit more, like feel like it's a bigger size. All right, buzz cut again. See this little thing at the top? This is just going to clip that off. Right, I'm just slicing off the very top, adding like 2.2 decibels of gain left. And then we reshape it. Right, so we'll mess with this. Basically, this is the initial transient. You could make it really sharp if you wanted. Right, so it's a little bit more knocky. This is a little bit more like flicky or sharp. So depending on what you're going for, this is kind of where the knocky kind of body comes in. So before the subs really come in, so you can kind of get as much of you as you want of that without. Right, and then you can kind of shape the sub weight here. Yeah, see if I do this, it kind of goes like a hoo. Like a wah, Yeah, so you just kind of shape it how you want after that. Now, the benefit of this is, because we bricked it out, we actually added those harmonics all the way down the line, right? So if we add more of that, right down to the end, you can see that our kick drum is really squared out. Now, we didn't do that much. We did quite a bit less, actually, 28%. But you'll notice these are really quite steep around the origin compared to a sine wave, and sharper at the top. And that's, again, part of this drive that happens as you steepen this line here, right? So if we did a hard curve, then that would be even steeper. Right, and here we haven't really squared out per se, but you can see that it's kind of like forcing this upward angle as it comes out the gate. Cool, so making it kind of more, you know, like the edge of a saw or a square wave, right? Adding those harmonics. So even though you're not actually squaring out the top that much, you're adding those harmonics closer to the origin, which is interesting. Yeah, so that's it, guys. Like literally, you know, so the trick to re-envelope at the end, you don't need Shaperbox to do that. Like say we didn't have Shaperbox and we have this monstrosity and we're like, well, we like the harmonics over time, but the envelope's all fucked. You could literally go into like, right, say this guy, you could show the automation on this chain, right, and be like, okay, I want the volume envelope to look approximately like this over time, right, and then, right, or that's probably not a very good shape. Right, so you can shape it however you want, right? The point is, you know, you can shape it however you want. I just like Shaperbox because these curves lend itself to producing really musical shapes. Just like, you know, these sort of serpentine, river-like flowing shapes that are very musical. Okay, that's all I have for you guys. Hopefully this was informative. On what makes kicks really kick hard. Most of the time you don't need your kicks to kick this hard, but it's good to be able to make your kicks kick as hard as the best in the game, right? And dial it back from there if you don't need it that much, right? So hopefully this was informative. Seriously, send me the kicks you make out of this. Yeah, I can always use more kicks from more people's imaginations, like more designers who do things a little bit differently. So if you come up with good stuff, send it my way. Maybe we can put together a sample pack of all the stuff that people submit, like the kinds of things like this, and then we can all share, and it'll be awesome stuff, and I can like curate the best stuff. All right, love you guys. Take care, and I'm going to get on to video number 3, I think. All right, peace.